Welcome back. A little while ago, I tried to make a video in which I was solving puzzles like my normal chess puzzle solving videos, but I failed so many of them and so badly and failed to understand them after I failed them that I got pretty frustrated, and so that video did not survive. However, what I'm going to do right now is to take a look at the puzzles that I failed and see if I can't figure something out, because I'm stubborn and I'm going to keep going. Follow along if you want to find out. Right here is the list of puzzles that I did today. There were 19 of them, and as you can see from all the red in the right column there, or next to right column, I failed 9 of them, which is almost half. So, and it did turn out that at the end, I finished 1 point higher than I started, or 2 points higher than I started, and I didn't realize that until later. I thought I had tanked. But anyway, I'm going to start down here at this first puzzle that I failed. I'm going to play this puzzle. Here it was white to move. Okay, and I do remember in this puzzle, I considered 3 checks. I considered queen to g7, queen to f6, and bishop to f6. The bishop and the queen would, of course, protect one another. I did not consider any of these checks other than to see that the king would just capture me there. And I didn't really consider queen capturing on h7 check, just because it wouldn't be lined up with the bishop anymore. I thought if I did that, that would give the king too many choices to get out of check. I did notice that the king couldn't come toward me because my pawn is guarding that square. But what I ended up deciding on was queen to f6, and that turned out to be incorrect. I thought that was good because not only did it allow me access to this square guarded by the pawn, but it allowed me an opportunity to take the bishop afterwards if the king, well, not there, but if the king moved out of check that way. The king had the opportunity to move out of check here, and I don't know what I would have done if it had done that. But it turned out that the answer was moving the bishop here, and that was the only move that forced a mate in 5. And I think I said something in that video about, well, I'm never going to see a mate in 5. And I probably won't. I'm just looking at this over and over, and in a game, I'm probably either going to take this pawn or go here or here. Sorry, here or here with my queen. The idea is that if the king gets out of check in whatever way that he can, let's say I went to f6, and the king has 2 choices to get out of check. My queen is still protecting this bishop, and I could bring the bishop, I don't know, in here or something. The problem, of course, is that I'm in a little bit of trouble. I'm down a full rook. And if I just checked and then tried to protect my bishop, I think they could just take my bishop. And if I took back, then I'm still down a full rook. And the opponent is able to check me here. I have to come out. Maybe the queen comes down at that point to here, obviously, because it's a diagonal moving piece. But what I had to do in the puzzle was bishop here, and that turns out to be correct. Now, before I moved the bishop there, I thought if I did, the king only had 2 choices, and I was pretty sure it wouldn't come this way toward my queen, but it did. And then I realized if it had gone the other way, that would have been checkmate. So that's why it didn't go to d8, because my bishop protects that square, so that would have been checkmate. So it made sense that it came this way. Well, then the only check that makes sense to me at this point is here, because if I take the pawn with check, the king takes my bishop, and I'm down a piece again. And of course, none of these checks make any sense either. So here, then the king goes back there. I don't even remember what the puzzle said here. I just know that, well, that's not mate because the bishop can take. If I check here, my queen cuts off these squares and my bishop's cutting off those squares, so that would force the king there, and then that would be mate. Wait, no, if I go here, the bishop blocks. But then what do I do? Then I come here and it's in check, and when the bishop blocks again, it's mate. Okay. That was pretty difficult. But now that I've seen it, I understand the puzzle, but I don't know that I'm in a game, if we go back to the beginning, in a game, I don't know that I'm going to get that right and know that it has to be the bishop. The only thing, I guess, that would push me toward it being the bishop is the fact that the bishop is currently under attack. And that after I checked with the queen and the king gets out, then I still have to save the bishop somehow because I am down a piece. So I should be looking for a forced mating sequence of some kind here. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one that I failed, which was the very next one, which is this puzzle. And let's click play. In this puzzle, this bishop came in here. Now, again, here I only have 3 legal moves. I can move out of check to king to f8, king to d8, or I can take the bishop. I chose not to take the bishop because then I lose my queen. I guess the reason that my opponent wouldn't like that very much, is because once they took my queen, I would get their queen. But I moved out of check, and that turned out to be wrong. Now that I've looked at the puzzle, I know that I'm supposed to take the bishop, because then I'm just up a bishop. If they take here, I take their queen, and then I'm still up a bishop. And if they at that point chose to take my rook with their knight, I guess I could fork their rooks here with my knight. I don't know. But I know now that moving out of check was the wrong plan. Those are the two moves I tried first. Even after I failed by moving here, I tried the other one, and that one failed too. It had to be taking the bishop with the queen. So let's do that. And then they took mine. So then it made sense to me to take theirs because it's just hanging. And then they took whatever piece this was here. Was that a bishop? I think so. And then I thought nothing else makes sense other than taking that knight. So I took the knight, and that was the correct solution. The only thing I missed on this one was the first move, that it wasn't moving out of check. It was capturing the bishop and going up a piece that way. So as you can see, now I'm up a piece. They still don't have a check because that knight's protected. And if they're not careful, I'm about to fork their rooks there. Let's go on to the next one that I failed, which was just a couple of puzzles later. This one, 25-14. I'm going to open that one. Here, the opponent starts by moving the knight back. Now, I'll be honest, the very first move that I considered was playing f5 with my pawn to attack my queen. But when I looked at that move and I looked at it, then I just realized the queen could just move back to h3. And then I've moved that pawn for nothing. And I didn't see any way out of that. The only thing, I guess, that was an advantage of that move with the queen moving back is that the queen then doesn't protect this knight anymore. And so I should have focused on that I would just win a piece. But I didn't. I discarded that because it looked like the queen could just move out of the way, and I went on looking for other things. But that turned out to be the best move here. And the queen surprised me by moving forward. This is one that I looked at the analysis board later and didn't understand, because it said that's actually their best move on Stockfish. It said moving back was actually worse for white than coming forward here. The problem with coming forward, I think, is that I still pick up the knight for free, and I'm threatening the rook at that point. Yeah, they can take my queen, but I can take it back. And I've gone up a piece, and I'm threatening another one. So that is the correct move. They take my queen, and I take their queen, and that's the end of the puzzle. It shouldn't have mattered to me that playing queen to h3 was worse than playing queen to g5. Either way, I got the knight. That one I think I did understand afterwards. The part I didn't understand was why one of those was better than the other. But now looking at it again with a better frame of mind, I realize it doesn't matter which one's better, or wherever the queen goes, that I do get the knight, because the queen was the only defender of that square. All right, next one, which is, now I've had 3 failures in a row here, and I'm going to start with this one that ends in 186. I'm going to click the play button, and the king moved here. Now this one I made several wrong moves in a row, and then when I found the right one, it seemed really obvious. The wrong moves I made in a row were things like I checked here with the queen. That doesn't make any sense because the king just gets out of check. The only reason that I thought of that move was that once the king moves out of check, I could take this rook, which threatens the queen. I assumed they would take back. It would be protected by their king pointing at my queen, and then I would win the knight. But that's not good enough because we would still be even on material, except I guess I would be up a couple of pawns. But picking up that knight wasn't enough. What was enough was this. This is checkmate. Their king can't move right now. My queen cuts off that square, and my rook, of course, is protecting all of these squares, and they've boxed themselves in with their own pieces. And nothing that they have can attack that pawn. So that's checkmate. So anyway, hopefully that helps. And I'm going to continue going through a few more of these, hopefully me talking through my thought process, where I went wrong, and what the solution actually was and why. Hopefully that will help you, but mainly this is to help me. Sorry, I'm selfish. The whole reason for this channel is for me to document my progress at chess, but I'm talking through this so I can learn it. I'm going to the next one, which ends in 918. Okay, click play. And what does the opponent do? The opponent moves their rook over here. Now, what did I do in this position that was so wrong? I think what I did was try to take this rook. And of course, that's impossible because their queen is right there pinning my rook. I can't take anything with it. All right, so that was a bad idea. Then I thought of the bishop sacrifice here on f7 because so many of the puzzles begin with a sacrifice check. And in this case, I think the reason that's not any good is because the king can just take it. But this is what I was thinking. The reason that I considered that was that if the king does take it, then I can take this pawn here with check, protecting my bishop that's behind the king. And then where's the king going to go? I wasn't sure, but guess what? I guess their queen could just come back and block that check, or their knight could come back and block that check protected by the queen. And of course, this rook and this rook would be protecting each other at that point. So it doesn't really work. What did work was taking the knight immediately, and I didn't even consider that in the beginning. I think I got in a hurry, and by this point I was already a little frustrated, but I have to go back to my major principles with puzzles, which I should also start carrying over into games. And that is to look for checks, look for captures, look for threats. And I have to look for those for my opponent too. And one of those right now, of course, is this. They're about to checkmate me because their rook is protecting that square. If I don't do something really damaging right now, they're going to capture here with their queen. It's going to be check. I'm going to be forced back. And then that down there is going to be checkmate. So I also then have to look for checks for myself. And of course, this one that I did find was a check. And this one, this illegal move that I found was also a check. But it's illegal and impossible because of the pin. This one was a check, but it leads nowhere. As we saw, if they capture and I take this pawn, they can just block with the knight or the queen, either one. And I'm still not doing really well. That's probably not horrible, and in a game might be viable. Because again, if they take and I take, I don't know, would they block with the knight? They might, but then I can take this rook with my rook, right? And if they take back with their other rook, I can take back with this one, and then they would take my bishop, but it would still be up 2 knights at that point, so that's not good. But I have a check here. That knight is just hanging. It's a capture and a check. And that turned out to be the whole puzzle. I think the reason is because their only legal move right now is to block that check. They can't move their king here. No, sorry, they have 2 legal moves. Okay, I'm confused now. They can't go there, but they could come forward, and I'm not sure why the puzzle didn't continue. If they blocked the check, I think that would be mate. I would take with my queen here, protected by my rook. And even though my rook is pinned, it's still protecting my queen. But anyway, that was the whole puzzle there, just taking the free piece with check. And I think in real life, that would force the king forward, but then I guess I could pull this bishop here and check again, and then the king might go back there, and then I don't know if I would take that rook or not. I really don't know how that would work out. Again, this is one of the ones that the capture should have maybe seemed obvious to me because A, it was a free piece, and B, it was check, and it was a pretty forcing check, and I just didn't even see it because I didn't go through my checklist. I guess that's a play on words, but I need to go through the checklist, including checks, captures, and threats. And I probably would have seen that had I gone through the checklist. Okay, let's go on to the next puzzle, which is the one that starts with 064. Okay, and this one begins with the queen capturing here. This one was one where I simply could not figure out what the first move was, because I do have a couple of checks to start the puzzle. Those 2 are checks, and of course this is a check, but they all look really bad. The 2 queen checks, I think the king would just capture back, and the rook check, I think their rook would capture back. Also, I'm in danger of being checkmated on the back rank. My rook is under fire. That's what I didn't notice. And again, going through my checklist of checks, captures, and threats, I didn't go through the whole thing. I started with checks for myself and then got frustrated because I couldn't see anything. I looked for captures, didn't see anything other than that pawn or this pawn, which both of those captures look bad. Threats, I didn't go that far. I got frustrated, but there is a threat here. If I bring this rook down, that is a threat of checkmate on g2. So I should have gone that far. And then looking at my opponent's threats on me, I did notice that they were in danger of checkmating me on the back rank. I could have looked at that just a second longer and realized that if I do threaten checkmate down there on g2 by moving my rook to e2, where's this queen going to go to checkmate me on the back rank? If they come here to check me, I can block with the bishop, for one thing, because it's protected by my queen. They went here, of course, I would capture it with the bishop. And if they went here, I would just bring the rook back and capture their queen with my rook. And again, my rook is in danger right now, so if I'm not checking, I need to be avoiding checkmate. And one way to do that is to move this rook. That should have led me to the solution here. I didn't even understand that when I failed this puzzle earlier and looked at it, but I understand it now. I'm avoiding checkmate by moving the rook out of here and protecting that square. So that's the answer, is to threaten checkmate myself while also removing their threat of checkmate against me. But they went ahead and did this anyway. And I looked around, I was like, that's the only possible move, I think, is my only legal move. Well, no, sorry. This is also a legal move, but then they would just capture that and that would be checkmate. So it made more sense to block with the bishop, and they took it. So I took their queen, and that's the end of the puzzle. And yes, it removes this threat of checkmate, but they saw checkmate coming, so they had to give up their queen for it. Now I don't have a checkmate, but I am up a huge exchange. I'm up a queen for a bishop, so I should be able to pull this off. Okay, that was the 064 puzzle. The next one I failed is the one that ends in 550 here. All right, let's click play. All right, the queen has just captured something here. I saw immediately this was a discovered check by moving the knight. So wherever I move the knight, they're going to be in check. So the obvious, because of where the queen is positioned with the knight, we all know, or should know by now, that anytime a piece is diagonally one square from the knight, that knight can threaten that piece immediately, either way. And so I thought, well, it has to be one of these, because that's a check. The king has to move out of check, and then I will win the queen with my knight, either that way or this way. I really don't like those L-shaped arrows. I wish they would just point straight, but they don't. Okay, so that seemed obvious to me. This one didn't seem obvious, because then the king moves out of check and I'm not threatening the queen anymore. Wait, why can that arrow be diagonal, but this one can't? Oh, come on. But yeah, I thought that's not the answer, because then I'm not threatening the queen. And that's not the answer, because once they move out of check, I'm not threatening the queen anymore. And in fact, I'm under threat. But I missed one possibility. I missed that one. I didn't even consider that one. Now, the problem that I had was trying to decide which of these two was best. And I tried that one first, knight to g5 check, and that failed. So I tried knight to d2 check, and that one failed. And I looked around, I thought, well, it's something check. Otherwise, the puzzle wouldn't have started with this. The queen is just here as a distraction, by the way. It's a trick. It's trying to get you to think, oh, I can win this queen. But the one check that I didn't consider was that one. That one is A, it's double check, and B, it keeps the king on the back rank. Because my knight guards that square, and of course my rook guards this square, so the only legal move was to go over. And because of the squares that are guarded, notice my knight's also guarding that square back there, and that's checkmate. And once I failed the puzzle 2 different ways and then looked for a new move, I did find this, and then it seemed obvious. But again, the queen was just here as a distraction. Something to keep in mind if you're not yet at the higher rated puzzles. This one is rated 2143. Once you get up into that range, a lot of times the obvious free piece will not be the solution. And so you need to look a little further. And in this case, I had multiple checks. Anywhere I moved the knight was check, but one of them was better because it went to checkmate. All right, one last one to look at, and that was this one up here at the top. Okay, in this one, it began with the knight checking me. And I'm playing with the black pieces. I do have a queen, but it can't do anything except the fact that I'm threatening checkmate. Okay, just by being where it is, it's threatening checkmate. Now, I'll be honest, by this point, I was so frustrated, I didn't even see that. I did see that I was in check, and I saw that my queen couldn't do anything about it because that pawn's in the way. And I didn't notice this until later, which is a little embarrassing. But in this case, I don't need to consider checks, threats, and captures in any order because I'm in check. I have to get out of check. Okay. The first thing I saw, besides the fact that I was in check, is that their rook cuts off all of these squares. The knight that's checking me, of course, is hitting those 2 squares, and the other knight is knocking off a bunch of squares as well. So that only left me 3 options. I didn't consider that one or that one because of A, how easy it would be for them to check me again. If I moved to b4, this knight could check me from there or there, plus the rook could check me. because that knight's protected by the pawn. So, and I thought if I went there, if I went to a4, the other knight could check me there or there, not to mention that the rook could check me. And I thought, well, what about a6? They can check me again, can't they? Yes, they can, with the rook. But on this one, I thought, well, I could just then go around it. So that's why I picked that one. And that turned out to be right. Well, I thought, well, the whole reason I picked that one out of my 3 legal squares that I had was because here I could just go around the rook. I can't go back up now because those 2 knights are cutting off those 2 squares. And I can't come forward because of the rook. So I have only 2 choices now, down or down and left, right? A7 or B7 were my only choices here. And I just picked A7 and B7 immediately because that was my idea, was to kind of play ring around the rosy with this rook. If I went there, I thought, oh, it might check me again, but then I would go here. And then if it checked me again, I would go here. And then it would start to run out of checks pretty quick. I mean, it could hit that pawn, but for some reason that's wrong. And I'm not sure why. But I thought if I came down to A7, they had another check right there with the knight. And then I would have to go here anyway. That was why I didn't go to A7, because I would end up on B7 anyway, just with the knight there. And then, of course, they could protect that rook by doing this, and that would be check. And then where would I go? I'm starting to run out of places. But that's wrong for some reason. I went there. That's the answer. That's not where I went. I went there to B7 and failed, but A7 is the answer. And instead of checking me again with the knight, they went down there to guard against checkmate. And when it went down there, that's when I realized, oh, I would have had a checkmate here. Okay. But they didn't check me, so now I've got a free move. What's my free move? Well, it's not checkmate now because they put the knight there protecting that square. Okay, so I have checks here and here, but then that wins my rook. I do have a check here that protects my rook and leaves the king only 1 legal move, and then from there I would win the knight. So that move I found, and that was the end of the puzzle. But on this one, I went to the analysis board and I could not figure out why A7 was better than B7. So I'm going to go look at that right now, try to figure that out. Okay. We got that. And again, I'm not sure why those two are so bad, but they were. On this one, I just happened to pick the better move. It says king to B4 would take us to drawn instead of me having an advantage. And king to A4 would give my opponent a very slight advantage. In both cases, in one case, it says that I would end up being checked by, let's see, let me look at that again. Yeah, I would end up being checked by the rook if I went to B4. And if I went to A4, they would check me with the knight to B6. Okay. Well, all those were among the possibilities that I discussed. Okay. So I played king to A6. And again, I assumed they would check me here. And even according to Stockfish, that's not actually their best move. Knight to F3 is their best move. I guess protecting against that checkmate down there. But they played the next best one, which, okay, that's about equal, minus 5.61. That's what they played. And again, I thought I could go here. Those are my only 2 legal moves, as I discussed. For some reason, going to B7 just loses. And it says it's because I would get checked over here. But if I go king to A7, they're not going to check me for some reason. But why? So I went here after I failed by going there. I went to A7 because it was the only other choice. And again, it's saying knight to F3 is the best move, or knight to C2, which is what they played in the puzzle. But that's worse. I'm not sure why they didn't do it. Or rook to C7 check. Well, again, the reason I didn't move here is because I saw there were so many checks, but I don't understand why knight to B6 check isn't among those options. Knight to B5. Why isn't that an option? And it says because I can play here. But again, why wouldn't I play there? It says king to B7 is really bad again. Okay, well, let's say I went down here. They can check me again with the rook, and that is, in fact, their best move right now. So let's say they did that. I can't come up now because their knight guards those 2 squares. So I have to go to C8 or A8. Now, I would probably go to C8, and the computer says that is much better. So I definitely would have gotten this one right. Okay, so let's go to C8 because I don't want to get trapped in the corner. Okay. Well, now they're going to check me again, right? They can check me with this knight. They can check me with the rook. They have checks all over the place. It actually says knight B to D6 check would be their best move at this point. Okay, well, let's say they played that because the puzzle should play the best move. Okay, now do I split the difference? It says I wouldn't. Well, it says that would be okay. It's 49.3 no matter where I go. I have 3 legal moves, and I'm minus 49.3 either way. Okay, I don't understand why this would be great, because these two knights are protecting each other, and this knight is guarding this square where the rook could check me from, right? So the rook's going to check me on b7. Okay, now it says king to d8 or king to c6 are equal, 49.3 either way. Well, I can't go there because of the pawn, right? Yeah, c6 or d8 are my only two choices. Okay, so what if I go here? They're going to check me again, right? I assume so, because checking is fun and it keeps me from checkmating them. Now it says I should go to c7. Aren't they going to check me again? Yes, they are. Now I'm back where I was. I can go to c6 or d8. Okay, well, let's try d8. Are they going to check me again? I think I would if I were them. So they're going to check me again. Well, now I can go to e7, but can I really? What's the options here? You see what I'm saying? That's why I didn't choose the move that I did, and I still don't understand, because we're several moves, 7 or 8 moves past the end of the puzzle, or past where it deviated from what I thought they would do. And I still don't understand why they played knight to c2 way back there in this position, because I had these two options, and again, I assumed if I went here, they would check me, and you saw if they checked me there, I was going to get in some trouble. But instead, they went down there. That's why I didn't consider this move, because that seemed dumb to me. And the computer, of course, says, oh, it's just fine, just come over here, and then the king has to go out one of these two ways. I don't know. It says either way, I would end up taking this knight. If the king went to e3, no, sorry, if the king went to e3, I would take the knight with my rook, and if the king went to c3, I would take the knight with my queen, and it would be check. So let's say it went here, and then, oh, now it's, what? Now it's saying my best move is queen to g1 check, or rook to c2, or queen to c2. But rook captures is, okay, rook captures is better. Well, of course, because they put the knight down there instead of checking me, like I still think that they should have. And I'm pretty sure any opponent playing me in that exact situation would have. So maybe you can see why I got frustrated with this. Maybe one of you, I know some of you are higher rated than me or near my rating. And just because two people are at the same rating doesn't mean that they understand the same things about chess. That's one thing that I've learned. Some of you that are at my rating understand things about chess that I don't. And I hopefully understand some other things about chess that you don't. But maybe if you understand what happened in this one, leave a comment. Try to explain it to me. I sure appreciate all of you watching, and we'll see you next time.